Ladies and gentlemen, what lights you up? Are you a spectator or are you a participant in your life? Now be honest. Are you doing what you truly love to do, or are you just passing the time till you retire? Did you choose your career because a parent or a school counselor or a friend told you, hey, you'd be good at this. Why don't you do that? So many of us are doing what's expected, not what we really want. We plod along, missing the signs that the universe sends us, until one day the universe hits us with that cosmic 2x4, that life-altering event, that near-death experience that changes our life. My name's Frank Zaccari. This is Life-Altering Events. We're going to talk about near-death experiences. My guest today is Nicola Lipscombe, who is from Australia. Now, Nicola was living a life that many people would consider, would envy. But she thought she was going through the motions. Then life changed. Let's get right to her story. Nicola, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Thank you so much, Frank. I'm very excited to be here and to share.
Well, we're glad to have you. You're early in the morning and we're here late in the afternoon in San Diego, but let's get with it. Now, give us an overview of your background. Where did you grow up, went to school, the beginning of your career, that type of thing?
Okay, I grew up where I now live, which is Adelaide in South Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So like you say, I've got a beautiful autumn morning here across the globe from you. I was actually born in the UK, but my growing up as a child was here in Adelaide, where I did my schooling, did my first university degree, and my growing up was fairly middle class, conservative, and I went to a public school here in Adelaide, and I was following a very traditional path. I had professional parents and I was expected to go to university and follow that path, and I did. It honestly hadn't occurred to me that there was any other option, any other path. And I think a lot of listeners would relate to that.
Yes.
You just, like you were saying, you travel down the expected path. And often there are so many people traveling down that path with you. You look around at the crowd and it's what everybody's doing. So that's what you do. So I ended up being a pharmacist. I went through pharmacy and was a pharmacist working in community pharmacy, hospital pharmacy. I worked interstate, I worked in London, which starts to give you an inkling that maybe it wasn't something that was totally suited to me, because I kept shifting. I thought, this isn't quite right. I'd have an opportunity at another, I'll try that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have an opportunity, operating and supporting a nursing home. I'll try that. Hospital pharmacy, I'll try that. Go overseas, oh, I'll try that. So I didn't pick it at the time, but I was obviously constantly moving because I was unsettled and I didn't have that sense of fulfillment that we all crave, yearn, search for.
Right.
And then I pivoted. So in my late 20s, I guess, I came back from overseas quite unsettled and thought, I don't know that this pharmacy gig's mine. But everybody around me was like, you can't let go of your pharmacy degree and you've spent so long doing it. So I pivoted just kind of slightly and ended up in the pharmaceutical industry, working as a specialist representative and then being promoted into Sydney with 2 national or international pharmaceutical companies, Schering-Plough and AstraZeneca. So I worked for them. So I did that. And then I ended up moving to Queensland and again did various sort of jobs related to pharmacy, worked at the Pharmacy Guild, did a project for the Pharmaceutical Society, and had an opportunity to get into academia through the side door, and then started my academic career. So that was at Griffith University on the Gold Coast. And it was an interesting journey there because I didn't come up through the ranks, so to speak.
Right, correct.
Yeah, so most people, they've done honours. They're on a PhD pathway. They're doing a research higher, degree, etc. And I didn't. I was a professional, and I came in through an opportunity to do some project work, which went down really, really well. So then I was invited back to do some workshops, and that worked well. And then an opportunity, after about 3 years, an opportunity came up for a lecturing position, and the School of Pharmacy at the time said, go for it. And I said, but I don't have the background that you require. And she said, yeah, but you've been doing all this work.
Mm-hmm.
So I got an academic position, and then I was climbing that ladder, desperately wanting to fit in, to be accepted, to belong.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd understand that, I think, Frank.
Yes.
We want to belong. We want to fit in. That's why we end up following the pathways, because inherently we don't want to be the outsider. And I was a little bit the outsider, and there was a few of us because we didn't come up through the ranks. So there was this sense of having to prove myself all the time, wanting to, but feeling a little bit almost like I had to work harder than the others, and taking on work and accepting things that you wouldn't necessarily want to, but think I have to, and then it kind of all crashed in a big heap.
Yeah, that's what I heard when we spoke. You told me that when you move into academia, I've done some work with some of the universities out here, and there's a definite sense of who belongs and who doesn't belong. Because I'm getting tenured and I've done all the research, and how did you get here, right? Did you see that when you initially started it?
Probably not when I initially started, but when I got the academic position, definitely, yes. And research was valued over teaching.
Yes.
So my passion was in the teaching and developing my skills in that, and how innovative could we be with the programs and supporting the students.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas overall, people were far more interested in research and getting research grants and getting awards in research. Whereas I got teaching grants and I got the university-wide teaching award 1 year. And I think I had, 2 people from the school that came to that awards ceremony. It just wasn't something that was considered, particularly in a scientific school like a School of Pharmacy.
Right.
Didn't have the weight.
Yes, it's the research. My daughter is getting her master's degree next week, and she said, all I want to talk about is research. I don't want to do research. I want to be in the field doing. I don't want to be researching. So there's a very big difference. So you had this job, this career, that was going very well, very well. And then when we spoke, you said 2011 comes along and everything changed. What happened?
Yeah.
What happened?
I crashed and burned big time. So that was a decade ago.
That's right.
And it was early in January 2011. So I was at university and I'm working away at my desk. I was setting up for 2 summer semester courses that I was due to teach. And university over summertime at that point is just quiet. It's like, a tumbleweed can kind of go through the uni. I'm in my office and I'm coughing. I didn't feel particularly unwell. I just had this dry sort of cough that wouldn't stop. And I was getting really irritated because I thought, how am I going to teach day after day for 2 courses back to back? So I went and saw the campus GP, who didn't know me from a bar of soap, Dr. Jane Smith, never forget her. And I basically went in to that consult almost with a prescription saying, just write me this, Jane. Just
I'm
broad
a
spectrum. I'm
pharmacist.
allergic to this. Give me this. And thank God she didn't. And she sent me off for an X-ray. I was highly annoyed because it was taking up my time. Came back the next day and there was a mass. There was a huge mass in the X-ray. And, you know, that was a incredible life-altering moments where I'm looking at this X-ray with her and I'm seeing this huge white mass in the middle of the X-ray, and I'm looking at it and I'm looking at her and I'm going, that's not meant to be. There is that, and that's and you know, you're trying to compute, going, that's an X-ray of my chest, therefore what's on there's in here. I'm like, oh my God. So I had a massive tumor that was sitting in the middle of my chest. It was attached to my heart, my lung, my thymus gland.
Oh my God.
So had to have major cardiothoracic surgery. So 2 weeks later, I'm on an operating table having a stenotomy, which is where they cut you from sort of here to here, 17 centimeters, break your rib cage.
Break your ribs open.
Yeah. And take the tumor out, and I've now got a patch on my lung, not a patch on my lung, patch on my heart, part of my lung missing, thymus gland removed. And that was the moment, you know, leading up to that, and that moment where your whole way of thinking changes, because going through that experience, I had those existential questions that went, what if this is it? What if I don't come off the operating table? What if they find the tumors metastasize? What if, you know, sort of what if?
Mhm.
So from the moment that I knew I had a tumor to being operated on was approximately 2 weeks. That's a long time to be sitting in the unknown and questioning.
Yes, it is. That's
So
got
there
to
was
be just torture.
I sat with myself, wondering and journaling as well about what I'm feeling and what I'm going through. And one of the things in my journal, which really was quite sad when you think about it, was there was a part of me that was also highly relieved because I now had a legitimate excuse, a legitimate reason not to kill myself working. So I had got myself in a cycle and wanting to prove myself, and you get yourself in a position where you feel like there's no way out. You're kind of on the wheel. I don't know how to step off. I don't know what to do. Everybody else is around. I don't want to feel like I'm a failure, that people are going to look at me that way. Whereas something like a cancer diagnosis was very easy for me to just push back and say, I'm not doing it. Somebody else needs to do it. I'm looking after myself. I don't want to talk to anybody. And felt in a way I had a legitimate reason to truly honor myself and not feel like I had to worry about what the outer world was going to think of that. It was like it didn't matter anymore. I was able to do that. And I've reflected that on a lot since and spoken to people since. And I thought I was weird, and have since discovered that that's not unusual for people to go through something and carry those two thoughts at the same time, that oh my God, sort of why this is happening and what can I do, along with a sense of, well, now I can just tell the world to basically bugger off.
Right, exactly. It's very common. I've spoken to so many people who hit that point in inflection, and it's exactly what you just said. So I was post-op. That's pretty heavy surgery. What was that like?
3 months of recovery. So it was initially, because of the the nature of the operation, I couldn't even open a fridge door. I didn't have the strength. So I had a rope with knots that were attached to the base of my bed. So because I couldn't pull myself up. So I had to do this. And my parents lived in Adelaide. This is because I was still living in Queensland and I was living by myself at that point in time. Mum and Dad came over for about 2 weeks to live in and just look after me. And then gradually it was a case of building my strength up again. And then what did I want to do? And going back to university, how did I want to manage that? And I had very lofty ideals of I am never going to put myself in a situation where I get stressed again, because I strongly believe that the tumor was a slow growing tumor. It had been growing for a couple of years, and it was just the high level of chronic stress.
Right.
Other things, I'd had a marriage breakdown, I'd had financial disaster as well. So there was a combination of events, and that culminated in the work experience and what was going on there. And I honestly believe that it was if we put our body under that much stress, our immune system can't cope. And that's what happened. My immune system didn't detect the tumor and it grew. And I had these lofty ideals. I'm never going to do that again. And I'm always going to honor myself, and I'll never do this. And I'm very human. So what can I say? It was an up, down, up, down. It's always been an improvement of growth and development, but there's lots of dips in between where all those things that you tell yourself you're never going to fall into that trap again, we do.
Yes.
So I've had to learn to also be compassionate with myself along the way. So I did go back to university, went into a different area for a couple of years, came back to the School of Pharmacy, and then ended up quitting and going, I need to really honor myself, and this is not suitable. This is not me. So it took a couple of years after that, what I call the crucible moment, to really radically shift my life. And I sold my car, I sold my possessions, I put my clothes and jewelry basically and some artwork in storage, and I quit. And again, everybody around me was like, oh, but you've got continuing appointment, you've got tenure. You know, people live their whole lives wanting to get this. And it was like, but it's sucking the soul out of me. I don't want to spend my life, you know, I want to live and be alive and joyful and want to find that space. So that was a journey then of wanting to find that joyful aliveness, because that's what I wanted in life, wanted to be me, wanted to find that and live a life of joy and aliveness and connection.
So what did you do? Did you stay in Queensland? Did you leave? What was the path to try to find that?
Yeah, I started by traveling, and I've always been a traveler. My first big experience was when I was 16, and I went to Germany for 3 months on an exchange, and that really, I loved that experience, and ever since then. So last count, I think over my life, I've been to about 35 countries. So
Wow.
I've loved traveling. I really am. So, and very grateful that I've had that opportunity in the past to do all that. So I traveled around Sri Lanka for nearly a month afterwards. I did an adventure travel tour, which I love. Just, you know, immersed myself in the experiences, and then came back to Adelaide to visit my parents, because I'd lived in Sydney, I'd lived in Queensland, I'd lived in London, I'd lived in Alice Springs in Central Australia. I'd been away for nearly 18 years. So I thought, there's nothing on the horizon. I can actually have a visit that's not a long weekend and then I'm flying back to wherever I was living. And I crashed again. So this time around, it was shingles and secondary infections combined with bronchitis. You know, again, I had pushed myself so far and didn't read the signals again and crashed. So thankfully I was at home with mum and dad to be looked after again in their 40s, as you do, and rethought I was going to continue traveling. My idea was I love to travel. I love the experiences. I love the immersion. And I think it's a way of enabling me to be present. I've realized, you know, when I'm out of my sort of normal world, when we are in that place of exploration and curiosity, I am more present. So that's kind of one of the reasons I love doing it. So I was just going to travel. I thought going to Barcelona and learning Spanish and maybe doing some
salsa dancing,
dancing would be a really useful use of my time. And through that, I thought at some point I'll start to unpack what it is that's going to be my next life adventure. And I sort of flipped that and stayed in Adelaide and started to go to workshops and do more reflection and inner work and work out what can I do now. And as well applied for and got accepted into a master's in applied positive psychology. So that was aligned. That was much more me from a professional point of view. And alongside of that, very much going on a personal growth and a spiritual growth path, going there's more to life, and I want to feel that connection to something beyond me and be part of something beyond me, and truly starting to immerse myself and then experience that as well.
And
that's ongoing.
When we spoke, you said you felt a strong connection being in nature, walking in nature, taking in nature.
I do. I have a real connection with trees. I love trees, forests, and find them very nurturing, very grounding, and have had only one experience a couple of years ago where I was standing looking up at this tree and really feeling into my body and feeling like I've got etheric roots coming out of the soles of my feet, which is, you know, one of the meditations that I do, connecting with the roots of the tree. And I could feel this incredible energy and connection and this downward pull, as if this particular tree was saying, yes, I feel you, I hold you, and your roots are combining with mine. It gives me goosebumps now. It was a connection different from any I had experienced before. And it was a beautiful experience. It's a very grounding experience. So I have this incredible love and connection with trees in particular.
Right. There's this energy field in nature that seems to be more present than when you're sitting in a cubicle someplace.
There is. And we know scientifically the Shinrin-yoku, the Japanese art of forest bathing, and we know there's a lot of phenols that are released, and what happens when we are fully present, and there's an element of mindfulness in there that slows down our heart rate, our blood pressure, our parasympathetic nervous system. They've done studies around natural killer cells, and our natural killer cells, our immune system boosts. You know, there's all sorts of biochemical stuff that can be proven. And for me, there's just this profound sense of connection.
That's incredible. Now, you told me when we spoke that you discovered Rachel Jane Grover. I hope I pronounced her name right. And the art of feminine presence. What'd you learn?
Beautiful body of work that I discovered, gosh, around 2014 or 15, around the time I moved back to Adelaide. And it was through a new friend that I made very shortly after arriving back in Adelaide, Mackie. And Mackie is an art of feminine presence teacher. So she sort of invited me to come to some of her classes that she was running. And initially I came to a few and I thought,
as we all do.
not sure about this. Seems a bit woo-woo to me. And it said, thank you very much, Mackie. And didn't really do much more. And then as I was exploring, going on more on my spiritual journey, I started to think, actually, this work around really coming back into your body, and for women connecting with their womb, which is, for men, we've all got a power center, whether it's, you call it the dantian, the hara, or you want to call it the center of the womb, the sacral chakra, sort of that really grounding energy center that we have. And so I actually approached Mackie to say, look, I'd love to do, some more classes with you. And God bless her, she went, no. And I went, what? And she gave me a beautiful lecture on, you have to leave your academic, scientific head at the door. This is true presence, embodiment, heart-based work. And I went, I won't let you. I don't think it's wise unless you can promise me that you can do that, because you can't intellectualize your way through kind of spiritual growth. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So I did. And that's when some of the greatest profound shifts for me occurred, when I went, okay, I'm just going to leave my head and logic and reason at the door and just allow what happens to happens, to allow what to be, to flow with it. And over the years have become so much more embodied, so much more present, so much more able to feel the energy within my body, around me, when I'm connecting with others. And it gives it an incredible sense of self and self-confidence and self-awareness and presence, that I continue to do the work. I continue to love that. And it's one of those bodies of work that you don't do once. It's truly a practice that you deepen and deepen and deepen. And I love that. And it's been probably one of the biggest game changers for me, because it got me out of my head into my body and really opening up that heart, and then being able to speak and listen and connect to others from that space, from a real grounded sense, and with the heart. And the combination of that, it's when people experience that, you have to experience it.
Right, you do. It's now, you speak a great deal. You do a lot of speaking about heart-led leadership.
I do.
Okay, elaborate on what heart-led leadership is.
I call it heart-wise leadership. So
Heart-wise.
you're leading from the wisdom and intelligence of your heart. It's insight from the inside. Instead of looking for the answers and the insights from gathering all the information outside, we carry so much wisdom within ourselves. And the way the world is going, we need a paradigm shift in leadership, which is very much, we need the heart, we need the emotional intelligence first, then bringing in the IQ and the strategic intelligence. We have led for too long just with strategy and intellect and not honoring the heart. So, one of my quests in the world is to flip that and go, we need to lead from the heart, which includes being much more present and embodied within our heart space and within our body and how we connect. It's around that self-awareness. It's often can be called the ABC: awareness, belonging, connection. 3 leadership qualities that are going to take people forward from now. And the heart qualities like courage, compassion, care, connection, creativity, collaboration. They're the skills.
Right.
They're the skills that we need. So Heartwise Leadership is a set of practices that I teach for leaders to become far more embodied and lead from their hearts. We're not saying dismiss the head. We're saying you need to at least line them up and preferably lead from one and bring in the other with your decision making, and particularly with the way that you engage and interact with your team, with your colleagues, with your leaders, with your people. People operate from the heart. What matters is how you make people feel. You don't make people feel that they belong, feel that they want to give from a head-based, intellectual, logical, rational approach.
When we spoke, you'd mentioned so many women, you do this for a great deal of women, have this, I have this emotion, I have this feeling, and I cannot succeed because I have to be more analytical. And you tell them, no, you don't. You're okay being you.
Yeah. It's what the world needs. We need a return to that. It's a return to the feminine.
Yes.
Of holding space, embracing, being empathic, caring, nurturing. They are qualities that the workplace needs, families need, communities need. And I'm seeing a global shift, which is really, really exciting, around heart-based leadership, heart-centered leadership. And there's been a real rise in people recognizing the power of listening. So
Absolutely.
That is, if you're looking for sort of one skill that's going to cut through all of that, it is the skill of a truly heart-based, centered way of listening to yourself and to others.
That's right. It gets past what you called, when we spoke, the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Yes. Now you have a program you call CARE. This to help leaders to better engage. I think we've been talking about that, but going to what does CARE mean?
CARE is an acronym that I use to remind leaders and give them some tools that are kind of practical, tangible, to understand what it is to be a caring leader. So it's around communication, appreciation, recognition, and empathy. So how you communicate. So that's very much that listening piece, and how you receive people. People need to be appreciated. They need to know that you value them, and not just for the work that they're doing for you or the organization, but you actually see them and appreciate them for the human being at that heart-based level. The recognition is around recognizing their strengths. And we know that when people are able to do what lights them up, what they're naturally good at, what their talents are, so you are recognizing them and tapping into that, magic happens. And we know how important empathy is. And I like to talk about putting on an empathy cloak. You wrap yourself in a cloak, which is the other. You know, often people talk about putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, and I think it's way more than that. It's understanding where they come from, but feeling into that. So you've got to wrap yourself in that imaginary cloak of them, so that you see through their eyes, you hear through their ears, you feel through their heart, to truly appreciate the space that they're operating from. You don't have to agree with it. Empathy is not about agreeing. You don't have to approve. It's a case of, all right, when I wrap myself in their cloak, I can now see why they are responding that way, because of their background, their experience, their patterns. Okay, I get it. And now you can build that trust and actually communicate with people at that level.
I had somebody tell me one time, because I mentioned sympathy, and they said, no. Sympathy is the person who says, if you need anything, call me, and they never show up. And empathy is the person who's right there with you, that you don't call, but they're there and they're going through it with you. Is that accurate?
It's close. I think sympathy is really the recognition of somebody else's suffering, in that it's the, I'm so sorry, oh, you poor thing. You know, it's that kind of acknowledgement. But you don't have to understand what somebody's going through to be sympathetic at all. You just recognize that they're in pain and go, oh, you poor thing. I'm so sorry that you have to go through that. And empathy is truly understanding, to go, I get that what you're feeling is extremely uncertain, scared, fearful of the future. You're worried about what people are going to think if you do this. And I can get why you're becoming reactive, or why you're withdrawing. It's letting them know that you see them.
Much better explanation. Well, this has been phenomenal. We've been zipping right through over 45 minutes here.
Wow.
I know, it's incredible. We're just about out of time, but with all you've been through, the high academics, the high achievement in the academic world, and professionally to where you are now, what last thoughts, what last words do you want to leave with the listeners around the world?
Follow your intuition and follow your heart. It won't lead you astray. I think that's it. It's Rumi. It's those words, because it's when I have done that and trusted in that my life has unfolded in ways that I could never have imagined. I could never have imagined speaking on a podcast, me in Adelaide, you in the States, around a life-altering event, sharing 5 years ago, not even sort of anywhere within my world. So things unfold, and it's beautiful when you kind of follow your heart, or the breadcrumbs. Sometimes you can't see what the end is, but intuitively you get that feels right. Go with it. Trust it.
It's incredible. And I'm hoping that more and more people who listen to this take it to heart and do what lights you up, which was the whole title of this whole talk when we started. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we're just about out of time. I want to thank Nicholas. This was so inspiring, and it's just amazing how she can talk. There's some people who talk at the head level, and you talk at the heart level, and you connect with everybody you speak with. So, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what life throws at you, and you heard a lot was thrown at our guest here today, please do 3 things. Look up, get up, and never, ever give up. Pick up the pieces, start moving forward, and better times and better people will come into your life. If you want more information about Nicola, you can contact her through her site, or you can contact me and I'll make sure it gets to her. You can see this show on ROKU TV, or in my YouTube channel, Frank Zaccari. I'll also send links to Nicola, and she'll post it wherever she posts all her information around the world. If you go to the YouTube site to watch, please subscribe to the channel. Now, let me leave you with this, ladies and gentlemen. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Nicola showed us where many of those rocks are. Join us again next week. We get into another life-altering event. Thank you again.
Thank you.